Okay, let's dive in. Today, we're unpacking a case that, well, it really shook things up back in the day, and honestly, it still does. The relationship between Mary Kay Letourneau and Vili Fualau.
Absolutely. It wasn't just headlines. It became this huge kind of cultural flashpoint. And the narrative got twisted pretty quickly, didn't it? This whole forbidden love story took over.
It really did.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're not doing today. Our mission here is to cut through all that noise, the tabloid stuff, and really conduct a forensic analysis based on the sources. We want to get into the mechanics of it all.
Right. We're looking beyond the sensationalism. We want to understand how it started, the grooming process involved, how that post-arrest contact even happened, leading to another child. And then, the challenges Vili faced as basically a kid raising kids. And finally, why the marriage ended.
Exactly. It's about looking at this as a complex intersection of, well, methodical grooming and a really stark power imbalance.
That power dynamic is key. Let's trace it from the very beginning.
So let's start right at the beginning. How do they even meet? The first contact, it sounds almost mundane.
Totally mundane. It was 1991. He was just 7 years old, little kid in her second grade class, Shorewood Elementary. And by all accounts, she was seen as a really good teacher back then, highly regarded.
Okay, so standard teacher-student thing initially.
Yeah, and the sources say her initial interest seemed pretty innocent, focused on his art. He was talented, apparently, even then. And she kind of encouraged that, kept up with it, even when he wasn't her student anymore.
But then things changed
Yeah.
dramatically. When did it really shift?
The big shift was January 1996. He comes back into her classroom, but now he's 12, a sixth grader. And the timeline from there is, well, it's fast.
How fast?
Alarmingly fast. By June 1996, just about 5 months later, the relationship turned sexual. She was 34, married, 4 kids. He was 12.
Wow. Okay, that speed suggests something was already brewing, or that the conditions were right.
Exactly. The vulnerability was there on both sides, but the power, age, authority, that was all hers. The sources make it clear this wasn't just random. It grew out of this kind of confluence of crises they were both experiencing.
Let's talk about her crisis first.
Mhm.
What was going on with Letourneau in 96? It sounds like her life was kind of imploding.
It really seems like it. Her marriage was falling apart. Sources mention affairs on both sides, money problems, big stress there.
There's more than just marriage trouble, right?
Oh, yeah. Deeper stuff, too. She'd recently had a miscarriage, which is documented, and her father was very ill with cancer, eventually passed away. So you've got this mix of marital breakdown, grief, maybe professional pressure. It left her really psychologically vulnerable.
Looking for something outside her regular life.
Mm.
Validation. Control.
All of the above, likely. Seeking validation, needing to feel in control of something, maybe needing to feel special, powerful when everything else felt like it was collapsing.
And then there's Vili.
Hmm?
He walks back into her classroom, and he's got his own set of vulnerabilities. What was his situation like?
His home life sounds really tough. Sources describe it as chaotic, unstable, sometimes even violent. His mom, Suna, was working incredibly long hours, basically holding things together on her own.
And his dad.
Very little contact, apparently often incarcerated, so no stable male figure, not a lot of structure at home, just instability.
So the psychological evaluations later called him a confused and emotionally needy child. That makes sense in that context.
It does, and think about the contrast she offered. He's living in this chaos, maybe feeling neglected, and here comes Letourneau, educated, composed, successful, an authority figure.
Yeah.
She represents stability, structure.
And focused attention.
Crucially, yes.
Yeah.
Focused individual praise for his talent, his potential, things he likely wasn't getting consistently elsewhere. That contrast is like the bridge. It allowed her needs to intersect with his.
Her need for control and validation meeting his need for safety and attention.
Precisely. It wasn't a spark of romance. It was this calculated, or maybe subconsciously calculated, targeting of vulnerability. She found a child uniquely susceptible to the kind of intense adult focus she could provide, and that laid the groundwork for everything that followed.
Okay, so the foundation is laid, needs meeting needs, but with that huge power imbalance.
Yeah.
How did she then move from interested teacher to, well, grooming him? The sources call it methodical.
Yeah, methodical and systematic are the words used. That special interest in his art became the cover story for systematically breaking down boundaries. It looked like mentorship, right? A dedicated teacher helping a talented kid.
But it was more strategic than that. What were the actual steps?
Well, things like arranging to drive him places, specifically to community college art classes. Sources even name the colleges. On the surface, it's, I'm helping him pursue his passion.
Oh, really?
Really, it's about getting him alone, under her control, outside of school, away from his mom's limited oversight. Creating that one-on-one time, building reliance.
And then came the really big step, blurring the lines completely by bringing him into her home life.
That was the masterstroke, if you want to call it that, making him a regular presence in her house, supposedly for studying art projects. He even became friends with her own son.
Which sounds almost normal on the surface.
Right. But think about what it did. It replaced his chaotic home environment with her seemingly calm middle-class one. It redefined his social world, made her home the safe space, the place he wanted to be. That creates profound dependency.
It's like replacing his support system with her.
Exactly. Each step seems small, maybe even justifiable in isolation. Oh, I'm just driving him. He's just studying here. But put them together and you see this pattern of deliberate boundary erosion, creating a world where he relies on her for everything important.
And she knew this was wrong, right?
Yeah.
This wasn't accidental boundary blurring.
The sources are pretty clear on that. She actively hid the extent of their time together, the growing intimacy from school officials, from her husband. She knew it was improper.
And that police encounter at the marina really proves it, before anyone else knew.
Yeah, June 18th, 1996. Cops find them late at night in her minivan. And what does she do? She doesn't just make an excuse, she lies. Tells the police he's 18, he was 12, and gives them a fake name for him.
That's not someone who thinks they're doing nothing wrong. That's active concealment.
Crystal clear awareness of the illicit nature of what was happening. And that tells you the psychological manipulation, the grooming was pretty much complete by then.
So by June 96, the relationship turned sexual. And just a few months later, September 96, she's pregnant with their first child, Audrey.
The teacher boundary was gone, replaced by confidant, lover, whatever distorted role she created in his mind. And that manipulation, that reframing is so deep. It explains how later, even publicly, Valise would sometimes say he was the pursuer.
Because that was the reality she built for him. He felt like he was making choices, even though his choices were totally shaped by her influence.
He was operating inside her narrative. The outside world saw crime. He saw something else, something that felt necessary, maybe even desired. And that distortion, that's a heavy burden to carry for decades.
Okay, so the relationship becomes public knowledge eventually.
Yeah.
Her husband finds letters. Someone reports it. March 1997, she's arrested, pregnant, charged with second-degree child rape.
Oh.
But then the legal system, it initially went surprisingly easy on her, didn't it?
Astonishingly so, yeah. It was hugely controversial at the time. August 97, she pleads guilty to 2 counts. But the sentence, 7.5 years, suspended. She only had to do 6 months in jail, and 3 of those were suspended too, plus sex offender treatment.
So basically 3 months jail time for 2 counts of child rape.
Pretty much. There was massive public outcry, as you can imagine. But the judge, Judge King, set one absolutely critical condition for this incredibly lenient deal.
The no-contact order.
A strict, lifelong no-contact order with Vili Fulau. That was the linchpin. Adhere to that, and she avoids serious prison time.
And how long did she adhere to it?
Barely at all. She served those, roughly 90 days, gets released on parole early January 1998. And you'd think someone who just dodged a massive bullet would walk the straight and narrow.
Especially with that order hanging over her head.
Especially. But nope. It shows this overwhelming compulsion. It seems stronger than any instinct for self-preservation for her future, her other kids even.
So what happened? How soon was she caught violating it?
It was stunningly fast. Just 4 weeks after getting out. 4 weeks. February 3rd, 1998, police find them together again.
Where?
In a parked car near her home. A blatant, immediate violation of parole. And it wasn't like they just bumped into each other.
No. What makes you say that?
The evidence found in the car, it pointed straight to a plan to run. They found over $6,000 in cash, her passport,
Right.
and baby clothes.
Wow. Cash, passport, baby clothes. They were planning to flee, to just disappear together.
It looks exactly like that. A clear plan to ditch the state's supervision and just continue the relationship somewhere else. It was basically a middle finger to the court, to the plea deal she'd been given.
And the judge wasn't having it this time.
No way. Judge Linda Lau, who handled it this time, was furious. She revoked that original plea agreement entirely, said Letourneau had foolishly squandered her chance. And boom, the full 7.5-year sentence was back on. She was going to prison for real this time.
And in that brief 4-week window of freedom, before she got caught again, something else huge happened.
Yes. That's when she became pregnant with their second child, Georgia, during that 1 month on parole between release and rearrest.
Was that potentially strategic
Hmm.
or just incredibly reckless?
You could argue both, but psychologically it functions as a strategic act of binding. Think about it. By having a second child, she ensures their lives are completely, irrevocably intertwined. Forever. Through the kids.
Even while she's locked up for years.
Exactly. It guarantees that connection remains no matter the prison walls. She gave birth to Georgia in prison October 1998. So, yeah, the system could lock her up physically, but that bond she'd cultivated, and now cemented with another child, that wasn't going anywhere. It was like the ultimate insurance policy for the trauma bond.
So Letourneau is in prison from 98 to 2004, serving that full sentence. What's happening with Vili Fulau on the outside during this time? He's the victim, legally speaking, so he's not incarcerated. But he's got 2 daughters now, and he's still just a teenager.
Right. He's thrust into this impossible situation. Audrey was born in 97, Georgia in 98, while Letourneau was in prison. Legally, custody went to Vili's mother, Suna, but the sources say Vili himself was incredibly involved in raising them, right alongside his mom.
So he's basically a father before he's even 15.
Exactly. Changing diapers, handling childcare, all the responsibilities of parenthood while he's still legally a child himself and the child victim in this whole situation.
That dynamic sounds incredibly damaging. The sources call it the parentified victim. What does that mean, practically?
It means you're forced into these two completely contradictory roles at the same time. The state says you're the victim of a crime,
Yeah.
but you're also having to be the responsible adult caregiver for the children who are a direct result of that crime. It messes with your head, fundamentally.
It must completely rob you of any chance at a normal adolescence.
Completely. How can you be a regular teenager when you have adult responsibilities like that? And not just any responsibilities. You're raising the living proof of your own trauma.
Did this have concrete effects on his life path? Schooling, mental health?
Oh, absolutely. The sources are clear on this. He dropped out of high school when he was just 15, couldn't balance school and raising 2 kids, and he really struggled mentally. Severe depression, substance abuse issues are documented during this time.
And all under this intense media spotlight, right? The whole world watching this kid try to cope.
Relentless scrutiny. He talked about feeling incredibly isolated. His friends, other teenagers, they just couldn't understand. He said they had no idea what it was like to be a parent, let alone a parent in his specific, highly public, traumatic situation.
There's that quote from him. It's chilling. "I'm surprised I'm still alive today. I went through a really dark time." That sounds like rock bottom.
It really does. It's not just teenage angst. It's the voice of someone crushed under an impossible weight.
Yeah.
It really makes you think, how do you process abuse when you're immediately forced to care for the consequences of it day in and day out?
It's like the trauma is reinforced every single day by the parenting duties.
Exactly. It cements the bond to the traumatic situation, makes it almost impossible to develop your own healthy, independent identity during those crucial formative years. He was trapped, constantly reminded of the crime, not just by memories or media, but by his daily life.
Okay, fast forward. Letourneau gets out of prison in August 2004. What's the first thing that happens?
Vili Fulau, who's now 21, a legal adult, immediately goes to court. He petitions Judge Lau, the same judge who sent her back to prison, to lift that lifelong no-contact order.
And she grants it.
She does. Controversially, yes. And less than a year later, May 20, 2005, they get married. She's 43, he's 22.
Wow. So the forbidden love narrative wins out, in a way. They make it official.
They certainly tried to frame it that way. They had this big public wedding at a winery, and for the next 12 years, they lived as husband and wife. She worked as a paralegal, couldn't teach anymore, obviously. He did various things, gardening, DJing, and they pushed the true love story narrative hard.
But was it really about love, or was it something else, like maintaining that bond they'd built?
The sources really lean towards it being more complex than simple romance. It seems like a manifestation of that deep trauma bond, a shared need almost to publicly validate their story, to convince themselves and the world that it wasn't just a crime.
Like, if they're married and happy, it justifies everything that came before.
Something like that. For her, maybe proving it was love, not a crime. For him, well, maybe it felt like taking control, asserting his agency after being labeled just a victim for so long. Marrying her was a defiant act in a way, like saying, this is my choice, my life, even if that choice was deeply shaped by the original grooming.
Okay, so they build this life for 12 years, but then it falls apart. May 2017, he files for legal separation. Divorce finalized in 2019. Why? After everything they went through to be together.
That's the million-dollar question, and the sources give us a few different possibilities. It's not entirely clear-cut.
What are the main theories?
Okay, one is just normal marriage stuff. They'd been having issues for a while, try to fix it, couldn't. Standard marital decay.
Plausible. What else?
Another idea is empty nest syndrome. Their daughters were grown, moving on. Maybe the core reason for their intense codependency raising the kids together wasn't there anymore. The family unit's purpose shifted.
Okay. And the third theory, this one sounds more practical.
Yeah, the pragmatic financial one. This theory suggests the split was actually strategic. Apparently, Villy wanted to get into the legal cannabis business in Washington state.
Which was becoming a big thing there.
Right. But Letourneau's felony conviction, especially being child rape, would likely prevent him from getting the necessary licenses if they were married. Her record would taint his application.
So separating legally would clear his path.
That's the idea. It allows him to pursue his own business future without being legally tied to her criminal record.
Do the court filings support any particular theory?
Well, the filings were apparently very simple, minimalist, no fights over kids, they were adults, not much shared property mentioned, no requests for spousal support. That could fit the business theory, a clean break for practical reasons. Or just a really amicable split, maybe agreeing that empty nest thing was real.
But underneath any practical reason, psychologically, maybe it was just time. The original dynamic couldn't hold anymore.
I think that's the core of it, regardless of the immediate trigger. That fundamental power imbalance the relationship was built on is just not sustainable forever. Especially as he grew into his own man, an adult in his 30s, finally experiencing life outside that intense bubble of trauma and prison visits and raising kids.
The separation was maybe his first real step towards independence, defining himself outside of her influence.
It really looks like that. An assertion of his own identity, separate from the one basically forced on him 2 decades before. It was an escape, perhaps, from that control dynamic. His own maturation finally made the original relationship structure impossible to maintain.
It's just so complex, though, because even after the divorce was final, when she got sick with terminal cancer, he went back.
He did. Immediately. Became her primary caregiver, stayed with her constantly, to use 47, the sources say, right up until she died in July 2020. Her own lawyer said they were still in love.
How do you reconcile that? Divorce, then total devotion at the end.
It speaks volumes about the depth and confusion of that bond. Foulao himself described her death as both devastating, but also a relief that she wasn't in pain anymore. That duality, that deep ambivalence, that's the heart of their story, isn't it? Love, loyalty, trauma, relief, all tangled together.
And he still resists the label of victim, at least victim by her. He frames the media and the public scrutiny as the real source of his suffering.
Yeah, he's been consistent on that. I wouldn't say I was ever a victim by her. It's a defense mechanism, you could argue. To label her simply as his abuser would maybe invalidate his whole life, their kids, the feelings he genuinely had, however complicated their origin. He needs to see the connection as real to make sense of his own story.
But you still saw glimpses of that old power dynamic, didn't you? Even late in the marriage, like that interview moment.
Oh, that 2018 interview, yeah. Where she kind of pressures him on camera, asks who the boss is. His discomfort is just radiating off the screen. He calls the question ridiculous, but then he kind of gives in, defaults back to the old narrative, I was the pursuer.
It was easier to say that than challenge her, even then.
It seems so. Easier than asserting his full independence in her direct presence. It shows how deep those patterns ran.
And the story just keeps echoing. That movie, May-December from 2023, clearly inspired by them.
Mm-hmm.
And Foulao wasn't happy about it.
No, he called it a ripoff, criticized them for not consulting him, which, you can see as another attempt by him to finally control his own story, his own narrative, after decades of having it defined by others, by her, by the media, by the courts.
So what's the takeaway here? The legacy. It's just messy.
Profoundly ambiguous, I think is the word. That final act of caregiving. It wasn't necessarily proof, it was just a love story. It was proof of the incredible lasting power of that trauma bond forged way back when he was a child.
So the final thought maybe for listeners.
Yeah.
How does someone ever fully untangle a life that started with a crime, but was lived, experienced, and defended as a romance?
Exactly. Villy Foulao's life shows that healing isn't always about a clean break or a simple recovery. Sometimes it's this ongoing, lifelong negotiation with a past you can't escape, trying to find your own truth within a story that was never really yours to begin with.